It's being recorded. There we go. The meeting's being recorded and will be available afterwards for anyone who wants it, and we can send out the link to that. This is a webinar, so if you'll notice, there is both a chat and a Q&A. And so if you put your questions in the Q&A for our speakers, then we can ask them if time allows. So please use the chat for chat function and the Q&A. Our first speaker tonight, we're very pleased to have him, is Orrin Jacobson, who's the political chair for Personal PAC and the co-executive director for Men for Choice. So Orrin, you want to take it away?
Sure, thank you, Candace. And thank you everybody for being here. Thank you to all the organizations for hosting. It's nice to be with you this evening, in spite of the fact that we might wake up tomorrow in a world where Roe v. Wade is gone. I think it's important, while saying that, to recognize that in many states across the country, Roe v. Wade is already functionally obsolete, and that many, many people in many, many states are unable to access their constitutional right. I am the political chair of Personal PAC, and I'm also the co-founder of Men for Choice. So I wear two hats on this. One is to work to bring pro-choice, male-identifying allies into the fight to protect and expand reproductive freedom. And the other, through Personal PAC, is heavily focused specifically on the challenge of winning elections and electing pro-choice candidates to ensure that we pass pro-choice legislation to expand reproductive rights and access and healthcare in Illinois. So I want to touch on a couple things today with you all. The first is to just sort of take a very quick step backwards into what's happened in the last few years and what we've accomplished together in organizing in advance of this moment, because it's critical to recognize what we have done to set up and protect the right to choose and access to full reproductive health care. And I want to talk about the risks that we are still under, as well as what we are going to do to combat that risk. So many of you probably remember way back in 2017, it does seem like forever ago at this point in time, a bill called House Bill 40. And when we were organizing around House Bill 40, the thing that we were talking with everybody about was something called a trigger law, right? The idea that if Roe v. Wade were overturned, that the existing language in the Illinois Criminal Code could make abortion illegal right away. At the time, I remember when we were talking about it and organizing around it, a lot of people looked at us and thought that we were a little bit hyperbolic. But I am so glad for the work that all of you did in helping us pass HB 40. Not only did it remove that trigger language, which means that whatever happens with Roe v. Wade at the federal level, at the constitutional level, the right to choose, the right to access an abortion in Illinois is still on the books. But it also expanded access to abortion through state-provided health insurance for women who work for the state of Illinois, for people who can get pregnant who work for the state of Illinois, and most importantly, it expanded Medicaid coverage of abortion for low-income folks in the state of Illinois, which was a massive, massive deal to expand access. Now, in 2019, we engaged in the fight for the Reproductive Health Act, or the RHA. And the simplest way to think about the RHA is that we functionally enshrined abortion as healthcare and a right in the state of Illinois, and we cleaned up a whole bunch of messy criminal codes to make sure that there was no language criminalizing abortion inside of the state of Illinois. And then finally, this last year, we worked to repeal the incredibly harmful Parental Notice of Abortion Act to ensure that all young people could access abortion, especially those young people who are in unsafe environments. And we cleaned up a really important piece of the law. So the good news is we've done a lot of work in the last few years to prepare for this moment, with the assumption that this moment was coming. If you've heard Terry Cosgrove, the CEO of Personal PAC, who many of you may be familiar, if you've heard him speak over the last several years, you know he frequently would say when Roe falls, not if Roe falls. And so here we are, and I'm grateful to all of you for all the work that you have done as advocates and organizers to help us prepare for this moment. That said, I want to be very transparent with everybody that while if the decision comes down tomorrow, our rights are still functionally intact. A person who can get pregnant can still get an abortion tomorrow. All those laws that I just talked about would still be on the books. That does not mean we are not without risk. And I want to explain. The current Illinois Supreme Court is a 4-3 pro-choice majority. And there are really only 2 swing districts in the state around the Illinois Supreme Court. And these elections are going to literally have millions and millions and millions of dollars spent in 2022 to flip these 2 Illinois Supreme Court seats from pro-choice seats to anti-abortion seats. They are coming, and they're going to spend a ton of money to do it. One of them is the 3rd district, which is out sort of in DuPage and Will County. The other is the 2nd district, which is largely, but not totally, in Lake County. If we lose both of these seats, we will wake up after Election Day with an anti-abortion majority on the Illinois Supreme Court. And I want you to know that the lawsuits challenging House Bill 40, challenging the RHA, challenging the repeal of P&A are already written, and they are sitting in the desk drawer waiting to be filed and just hoping that on November 9th, I think I have my dates right, but someone correct me if I don't, that the morning after the election, there will be a different composition on the Illinois Supreme Court, and an Illinois Supreme Court that will be far more amenable to the challenges they would bring. Now, before anybody says, hey, Orrin, that sounds like it could never happen, I want to all remind us why we're here and what we're here to talk about, because the thing we all, I shouldn't say we all, but the thing many people didn't think could ever happen has happened, and here we are. So if we do not protect these 2 Supreme Court seats, and if we do not elect pro-choice judges to the Illinois Supreme Court in 2022, all the work that we have done in the last few years is at risk. And the only thing standing between us and a repeat of what is happening now at the constitutional level of the Supreme Court are 7 judges and how they decide on a series of lawsuits. I don't know about you, but I don't particularly want to take the risk of any more judges making decisions on these rights. And the way that we fight that battle and win that battle is to make sure we win these 2 seats. And I'll touch on that really, really quickly in what we're thinking about and what we're doing and how you all can get involved here in a second. But this is critical to know, and I just want to state the obvious, but I think it's worth stating. There are, I think, something like 8 million people in the state of Illinois. There are literally tens of millions of people in the states surrounding Illinois, literally tens of millions of people in the states in the southern part of this country whom are totally dependent on what activists and organizers and advocates and average citizens in this state do, both in mobilizing and educating voters and in turning out votes in November. I know that it is really tempting, especially in a moment in which we're looking at this massive federal story, to think about national politics. What United States senators can you go elect? I'm here to tell you that the single most important races for abortion advocates in the state of Illinois, beyond making sure that we re-elect a pro-choice governor, are these 2 Supreme Court races, the Illinois 2nd and the Illinois 3rd, which, given the stakes for not just the people of the state of Illinois, but all the millions of people around the state who will be dependent on a state like Illinois when they need an abortion, makes those 2 races probably the single most important races in America for the protection of reproductive rights and access. And so what we all need to do who are passionate and care about this issue is focus on our own backyards and do whatever we can to make sure that we organize to elect these 2 pro-choice judges in these 2 districts, in the Illinois 2nd and the Illinois 3rd. I'm going to put into the chat here, and then I'm going to wrap up my comments. And I know we've got a lot of other amazing speakers. I'm going to put into the chat here a link I think let me make sure I go to the right place, to everyone, there we go, to a website called janesarmy2022.com. A little bit later, we're going to be hearing from Jane herself, from Heather Booth, one of the heroes that Jane's Army is named after. And the entire purpose of this effort, which is being coordinated by Future Voices Council, Men for Choice, and Personal PAC, along with a host of other partners across the state, is to make sure that we educate pro-choice voters about the stakes in these Illinois Supreme Court races in particular, and that we organize and mobilize with those voters to make sure that we elect pro-choice judges. If you're looking for an outlet to get involved as an activist, to knock doors, to canvass, to phone bank, to write letters, etc., to make sure that the voters of these two districts in particular are aware, Jane's Army is a home for you to do that. I hope you'll consider signing up and look forward to working with you on that effort. And Candace, with that, I will yield the floor back to you and look forward to hearing from the rest of the panelists today.
Thank you so much. And thank you for emphasizing the importance of the Supreme Court races, because I'm just not certain that people are aware of how important they are. Sorry that we have to move on so quickly, but we've got some great people. Next, I'd like to introduce Claire McNorton. She's the program manager of advocacy and campaigns, and she manages the Disability Advocacy and Organizing Program for Planned Parenthood of Illinois. Claire, let me put you on Spotlight.
All good. All right. Thanks so much, Candace, for the introduction. And thank you so much, Oren, for your remarks as well. So the first thing I really would like to address is how the fall of Roe v. Wade is going to affect Planned Parenthood of Illinois specifically. So as states around us lose access to abortion rights, and we know that they will, we know that states like Wisconsin, Missouri, Ohio, our friends in the Midwest are likely going to have their rights rolled back. We in Illinois are going to see a surge in patients from out of state. We are currently anticipating a 20 times increase in out-of-state abortion patients annually after Roe falls, which is going to be equivalent to about 20,000 to 30,000 additional out-of-state abortion patients. So quite an increase there in services that we will be providing just in abortion. Something that I like to highlight to exemplify that, you know, those numbers are not outrageous is after SB 8 in Texas went into effect, we started seeing patients from Texas, all the way in Texas, within about 2 days. That's because, as we know, Illinois has no legal abortion restrictions, emphasis on legal. I will get to that in a little bit. And that's really thanks to our supporters like you, as well as our champions in Springfield. It's because we passed the RHA, which Oren just discussed. I was going to go into depth on that, but thank you, Oren, for saving me the time, and also the repeal of PNA as well. So due to those two things, RHA going on the books and PNA coming off, we are a very progressive state in terms of abortion laws, and there are no legal restrictions. Another reason why Illinois and Chicago is sort of a destination and a haven state when it comes to abortion rights is it is fairly convenient. So because O'Hare is such a major airport, and there are a lot of flights that go in and out, you can actually, I believe, still get a flight from Texas into O'Hare and out of O'Hare back to Texas within the same day. That makes it a relatively theoretically convenient location. And we, yeah, so that is one reason. In addition, we were very well prepared for this. Like Oren was saying, a lot of folks did not expect Roe v. Wade to fall. Planned Parenthood Illinois absolutely expected Roe v. Wade to fall. So we opened up a health center in Waukegan, which is very close to the border of Wisconsin. We also opened one in Flossmoor to help serve our patients in Illinois. And we moved to a larger loop location that doubled the number of clinicians that can serve patients. So our downtown location has doubled in size. We added abortion navigation services. So those started 1 to 2 years ago. And we added 1 2 years ago and then added another abortion navigator last year. And we also launched abortion pills through mail this spring to increase access to care and address health inequities as well. So if you recall, I alluded to the fact that Illinois does have no legal abortion restrictions. This is the next step for Planned Parenthood and for the actions we want folks to advocate for. Just because we have no legal restrictions to abortion does not mean that access to abortion is as full as we would like it to be. There are still restrictions on abortion. They're just not ones that are on the books. If you are lower income, it is obviously harder to access an abortion. Cost of travel, we all know what gas prices are like right now. Cost of childcare, and some folks don't have the opportunity to take time off work or school. And if they do take time off work or school, that's money lost. So being lower income definitely hinders access to abortion. In addition, location, rural areas have less access to transportation and folks have to travel a further distance to receive care. Age, it is still, even with the repeal of P&A, it is still more difficult for young people to get abortions and to have access to abortion. As mentioned in the introduction, I am our disability rights program manager. If you have a disability, getting an abortion is much more difficult. If we're thinking about SB 8-esque laws in Texas, if you rely on a caretaker or another individual to help you get around and navigate things, then you are putting that person at risk as well when you get an abortion. And physical and mobility disabilities make traveling more costly and complicated a lot of the times. And of course, race is a intersectional factor as well. Black and brown folks are more likely to live in underserved communities and thus often have fewer resources and less access to healthcare. So despite the fact that Illinois has no legal restrictions on the books, we have to look at this holistically. And we have to consider the fact that these factors contribute to individuals' ability to access abortion. So we have to be looking at all of these things as well. And there's so many more that I didn't mention. So we call ourselves a haven state, and that is absolutely true, but that means that we need to be a haven state for all people, not just folks that can afford to come to Illinois, not just folks who can afford the $500 flight from Texas. And therefore we have to hold our pro-choice legislators accountable and our pro-choice lawmakers accountable. So some things that you can do, you can call and ask, in Evanston, I know y'all have some really great legislators, and you can call and ask those folks what their office is doing to ensure Illinoisans have access to abortion, as well as out-of-state patients. And again, that access for all people. And in addition, something you can do is, thank you so much, Oren, vote and get folks turned out to vote in those Supreme Court elections as well. So we currently as well are working with champions to advocate for increased access to abortion service by advocating for increased funding for family planning services, expand pool of providers to nurse practitioners and physician's assistants so that they can perform abortions as well. So exactly, expanding that pool of providers. And we're also calling on folks to support abortion funds like the Chicago Abortion Fund. These organizations pool together funds to help people with cost of travel, help people with childcare. And they are really doing the amazing boots on the ground work to get folks access to the healthcare that they need. In addition, I'm going to drop a link in the chat and then I'm going to wrap up my remarks nice and tight there. to our Bands Off Our Bodies website. And there you can see some other actions you can take in your area as well as nationally. So that is all I have. Thank you so much for inviting me here today and allowing me to speak. It's been great, and I look forward to hearing your questions and the remarks of the other great speakers on the panel.
Thank you so much, Claire. It's so good to hear that you're doing and that you anticipated this. I guess the rest of us shouldn't have been so surprised, but I think a lot of us were. So thank you so much for sharing that information. Next, I'd like to introduce Bunyan Lee Gilmore. Let me put her in the spotlight. There we go. There you are. And I'm going to share the screen. She's got some slides to share with us. Bunyan is the VP of Strategy and Communication for Planned Parenthood of St. Louis region and Southwest Missouri. And it's great to hear another Planned Parenthood perspective, and thank you for all that you're doing. Let me know, are you ready to start the slides?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Hi, everybody. It's so good to join your community. Thank you for inviting me into it, and all of the work that you all are doing to protect and expand access in Illinois. Just a little bit about our affiliate and myself. I sit in Missouri. I live in Missouri. I am a red stater. I have been living the reality that so many folks have been describing here in a state that in a matter of days, abortion access will fall. So a little bit about my affiliate. We are located, we straddle the Missouri-Illinois border. We have 7 brick and mortar health centers in Missouri. We are the lone abortion provider in the state of Missouri, located in St. Louis. And we have a surge site facility here in Fairview Heights, Illinois. You can see a picture of the exterior there in Southern Illinois. We are one of 2 providers in this region. Hope Clinic for Women is the other provider in this area. And soon there will be more, I think, in Carbondale, Illinois. So patients are traveling now regularly from a 20-state region to this health center in Fairview Heights, Illinois, mainly from the Midwest and South, particularly since Texas's SB 8 took effect. Since Texas, we have seen a 121% increase in patients traveling to us from out of the state. And we have also seen abortions after 15 weeks increase by 53%, as folks are taking longer to navigate their way to health centers. The health center is, oh, sorry, go back one slide. Thank you.
I'm sorry.
It's okay. The health center is 18,000 square feet. It was designed for the post-Roe surge of patients. We built it in 2019. I can say the only silver lining of operating in a state like Missouri for so long is that we became uniquely aware of what was coming. And we knew that we needed to build a plan to help patients with care in a post-Roe world. Currently, we care for about 7,000 to 8,000 abortion patients a year. This health center was built to be able to take in about 15,000 patients a year. So it is designed to scale up for the post-Roe future. Next slide, please. Inside of this health center is the Regional Logistics Center, which was a project that we founded in partnership with Hope Clinic for Women. It is designed to be a one-stop shop for patients who need the full gamut of navigation help. So we help arrange travel and lodging. We connect patients to abortion funds and practical support resources like Chicago Abortion Fund and Midwest Access Coalition and many other funds in all 50 states. And since September, we've navigated more than 1,000 patients, and our affiliate absorbs the full cost of travel and lodging. And then of course, abortion funds and practical support resources help with the rest. Since Texas banned abortion at 6 weeks, like I said, we've seen 121% increase in patients coming from outside of Illinois. And so we are more and more doing things like booking ground transportation, airfare, train tickets, however we can get folks to care. Next slide. So a state of play in Southern Illinois, which, in downstate area, it's a little bit different because we are the closest access point for so many folks now as access is falling in Southern states. So you can see on this map, Missouri is a trigger ban. And so we expect abortion access to fall in Missouri within minutes of a decision. Our Attorney General has already promised to enact our trigger ban. But you can see that the Southern Illinois region is surrounded by states that also have trigger bans or both trigger bans and pre-Roe bans. So we anticipate access to fall in those surrounding states pretty quickly. I mean, Oklahoma has already fallen, Texas has all but fallen. And that has just created a ripple effect through our southern downstate region, where we're seeing patients as people are migrating from Texas up to different states. Abortion appointment times are getting longer for folks. And in a lot of those states, they have gestational age limits. And so folks are pushing up against gestational age limits and they don't have weeks to wait for an appointment. And oftentimes that's how they're finding their way to Southern Illinois. Next slide. We did some internal calculations on what we think will happen in the first year after Roe is overturned, and we anticipate about 14,000 out-of-state patients will turn to. That leads me to the last slide, which you can actually just stop sharing at this point because the last slide I had not updated for this particular talk. But we are focusing on some call to actions that are necessary for us to be able to, as abortion providers, not just Planned Parenthood, but indie clinics, abortion funds, practical support groups, for us to be able to accommodate for the incoming influx of patients. We've looked at New York, California, and Oregon. They have all invested an average of $2.23 per citizen in their state for reproductive health care. And Illinois, as the fifth populous state, lags behind. So we are asking the Pritzker administration to invest in reproductive health care providers, advocates, and patients. The other big ask, and just to echo Claire, because she also said it, is to ask the Pritzker administration to affirm scope of care under advanced practice clinicians like nurse practitioners and physician assistants, who in 13 other states are allowed to provide in-clinic abortions. In the state of Illinois, it is still not allowed. This is going to be a major problem for us in the Southern Illinois region, where we have limited providers, and we really need to expand the pool of providers in order to accommodate the surge, or else abortion appointment times will go up, wait times will go up, and people will be left without care. So this is actually a matter of urgency, and we really need the Pritzker administration to take action and really start to look at the new frontier of abortion access. We say in Southern Illinois, the status quo is just not going to be good enough, as great as it is. And let me tell you, as a Missourian, Illinois is amazing. I want to move to Illinois. It is a beautiful land of freedom and rights. But we are staring at an unprecedented moment for reproductive rights and healthcare. And we really need to start looking at what more our state can do to resource the work. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Boyan. That's you guys do such amazing, wonderful work. We really appreciate it and hope we can continue to support you. The next person who's going to speak is from Midwest Access Coalition, Patty Dashbach. She is MAC's volunteer coordinator and a client coordinator, focusing specifically on Ohio. So let me switch the spotlight to Patty. There we go. There she is. Hi.
Hi. Thanks so much for having me. This is the first time I've represented MAC in this way, so I really appreciate you all having me on. I have been a volunteer at Midwest Access Coalition for about 5 years, and like Candace said, I'm managing volunteers right now and working the hotline. Midwest Access Coalition is a practical support abortion fund. That means we don't fund directly the procedure itself. but we fund the costs related to abortion care for people traveling to, from, and within the Midwest. And basically what that means is we support the costs of things like travel, lodging, food, childcare, medications, maxi pads, anything having to do with your abortion. So for travel, maybe you need some gas money. We could get you a Lyft ride. Maybe you need a bus or a train or plane ticket. We also have volunteer drivers in several locations, so we might be able to get you a free ride. For lodging, we help cover the costs of hotel rooms for clients and their companions. And also we have volunteer hosts, mostly in the Chicago area, who open up their homes and have clients and their companions stay with them during their procedure. So how will the reversal of Roe impact MAC? Well, like we've been talking about, there's going to be a lot of states around Illinois that are going to ban abortion. And when that happens, there's going to be an influx of patients coming to Illinois, especially to the Chicago and Granite City areas where many of our abortion clinics are located. So more people traveling to for their abortion means more people contacting MAC and other abortion funds for support. MAC's already seen this increase year over year. In 2020, MAC served 635 clients. In 2021, we served 800 clients. And in 2022, we're only about 6 months in, and we've already served about 530 clients. Excuse me. And this was mentioned before, the people hit the hardest will be those with lower socioeconomic status and women of color. For multiple reasons, but especially because of lack of livable wages and lack of universal childcare, they seek abortions at higher rates. 75% of abortion seekers are low income, and most of them are also already parents. At MAC, the biggest age group we work with are low income and are young people in their mid-20s. So we know that limiting abortion care is going to hit young people and young families with the least means and the least resources. This was also mentioned earlier. People will also be hit hard in rural areas, and they already have trouble accessing abortion care. Lack of transportation is a big issue. If you don't own a car, or you don't have a car that you think will make it to the clinic and back home, you have to take a bus or a train. But if there aren't any bus or train options, then maybe you have to fly. But we all know the cost of a flight is way more expensive than the cost of a bus or a train ticket. Also, many of the abortion seekers who MAC works with have never flown before, and so that adds to the stress of travel. Also, you are limited by the schedules of all these transportation options. So you may end up spending more time away from home than you'd originally planned. So just as an example, I had a client not that long ago who needed a one-day procedure, which takes about 4 to 5 hours. She lived in Missouri and needed to get to a clinic in the St. Louis Granite City area. And she lived about a 2-hour drive from St. Louis. She didn't have a car, and she didn't have anybody that had a car that could drive her there. So we got her bus tickets, but because of the bus schedule, she had to arrive the night before her appointment and stay in a hotel. Then after her appointment was completed, the last bus back to her hometown had already departed, so she had to stay in a hotel again. So basically she spent 2 nights in a hotel for a 4-hour outpatient procedure, and that's really crazy. What is MAC doing to prepare? Abortion has been inaccessible for many people for a long time, so MAC is trying to increase our capacity to serve more people than we already do today, and we do that in several ways. We continue to partner with more clinics. especially having immediate accessible cash for abortion seekers at the clinic for pickup. We continue to partner with more funds and mutual aid organizations, especially in the states just outside the Midwest, where we know we're going to see an influx of patients from those states, so like Arkansas and Tennessee. We're also strategically onboarding volunteers, volunteer drivers and volunteer hosts in destination clinic locations. And also we recently partnered with a new organization called Elevated Access, which has volunteer pilots and who have their own planes, and they volunteer to fly our patients for us, which is great. And also, if you live in a rural area, that's going to be awesome. What can you do to take action? Amplify the messages of the organizations who are doing the work, especially reproductive justice organizations that are led by Black, Indigenous, and Brown folks. And some examples of that would be Sister Song and Indigenous Women Rising. Fundraise. We would love it if you just donated to MAC. But any abortion fund or independent clinics would be super grateful, especially in red states. Talk to people about abortion and say the word abortion. This is really important for destigmatizing. And you know, just don't feel like you have to whisper it, say it out loud. And lastly, be patient when you try to volunteer for an abortion fund. After the draft leak, lots of people wanted to volunteer and we received lots of applications. We are working through those applications. It's just, you know, slow going because our main concern are our clients, and that's where our focus is. And that's me. Thanks for your time. And I'm happy to answer any questions, but otherwise I'll hand this back over.
Well, thank you so much, Patty. You guys do such great work. We've been fans for years. And I think getting people to volunteer to host people coming in from out of state and just hold people's hands, you guys it's just such great stuff. And you do very fun fundraisers. So I would encourage everybody to support MAC. We had a question in the chat that I think you can probably answer as well. The question is, does Planned Parenthood do abortions? There's a Planned Parenthood facility in Champaign-Urbana. Do they actually perform abortions? Do you know?
Claire, did you want to take that?
I can take, so yes, Planned Parenthood is an abortion provider. The clinic in Urbana-Champaign, I just looked it up because I had to double check some of them, the services that they provide are different. Yes, to abortion provider. I can't immediately find though if they do surgical abortions, but I know that they do pill abortions.
Okay, that's good to know. Thanks for answering that one. And thank you very much, Patty. Thanks for coming. And I'm now going to turn it over to Linda Lowe. Let me put her in the spotlight. Go. Linda is a founding member of Chicago for Abortion Rights and a member of its steering committee. She was active in the pre-Roe abortion rights movement and the campaign to ratify the ERA. Everything old is new again. She's also been an activist in the labor movement, including the United Steelworkers of America. And she's a retired university worker from Northeastern Illinois University and was a leader of AFSCME Local 1989. So take it away, Linda. Thank you for all you do.
Thank you so much to all the sponsors. I'm really honored to be here. You're all going to get a little break from some of the Illinois specifics because a big thing, as most of you know, that Chicago for Abortion Rights is involved in is linking to the larger struggle of organizing protests to the fact that this is all happening and coming at us in the first place. And in spite of the amazing work that's happening here in Illinois, millions are still going to be facing untold hardships, lives upended, and even dying. And there's only one thing I'm grateful for, which is the fact that so many of us are coming together to express outrage, raise funds, strategize on many levels, including preparing to march together. This abyss we're facing didn't spring out of nowhere, as others have mentioned. The now infamous leak was a giant wake-up call. The assault has been building for decades. And I believe the sleeping giant of this wake-up call is the majority of American people who do not want to see Roe overturned, who can and must be part of bringing massive pressure to bear, no matter what happens, to bring back legal abortion everywhere and extend access to all. So despite the many hardworking, dedicated individuals in public office, several of whom many of us here have supported, voted, and worked for, I believe it is clear that we cannot rely on the electoral system alone to get this job done and bring the necessary pressure to bear. The restrictions have been mounting all along for years, ever since the day after Roe. And even when the Democratic Party has been in power, we still have the terrible impact of the Hyde Amendment, especially on poor, uninsured, and people of color all across the nation who can't afford abortions, let alone traveling to get them. I believe this fight is being lost in large part because we haven't mobilized that overwhelming majority enough, kept them active enough, visible and vocal on this issue. So the goal of mobilizing people is what Chicago for Abortion Rights has been about since its beginning. And as Candace said, I was also active in the fight to legalize abortion before Roe. And others of us alive and active then will recall that the context for Roe in the first place was a time where millions of people were in the streets of this country against an unpopular war, students and other layers of society demanding that US troops come out of Vietnam. There was also a massive civil rights movement and second wave feminism that was burgeoning movement. This overall dynamic of people in motion brought profound change. And the signing of the accords that brought Americans home from Vietnam was within weeks of Roe v. Wade being handed down by a Nixon-appointed majority Republican court. So Roe was a concession and a genuine victory that saved millions of lives, but as others have said, it was never enough. The depth of the failure of the medical system in this country is starkly revealed by the pandemic. The gross inequalities for Indigenous, Black, and people of color were exposed. It's no accident that the states with most restrictions on abortion are where infant and maternal mortality are highest. Many times the number across the American South as the national average, which is already shameful in this richest country of the world. The outrage after the Texas ban last September was palpable in the streets on October 2nd, but they fell far short of the largest outpouring in January of 2017, when millions across the United States and the globe filled the streets to protest the clearly misogynist, racist, and xenophobic Trump. But it wasn't until the leak this spring that we've begun to see again the outpourings that are possible and necessary. Back in the lead up to Roe, feminists across Latin America looked to the United States for what we were doing to legalize abortion. We inspired them. Now the tables are turned and we must draw inspiration from them and their green wave, which has won legalized abortion even in overwhelmingly Catholic countries, Mexico, Argentina, Colombia, and across the pond in Ireland. In all those places, they mobilized across all sectors of society, community, church, labor, students, and politicians into the streets again and again. Chicago for Abortion Rights in our panels and through our press conferences and protests we've helped to organize continue to believe that mass independent mobilizations to build the collective pressure from ordinary people, girls, boys, gender nonconforming, their future control over their lives and bodies are on the line. Mothers, fathers, union members, churchgoers, community activists, all together today, tomorrow, and the day after that. We need a fight back and along with everything else that the speakers have already addressed, we need a fight back we haven't seen but need to see that gives meaning and energy to we won't go back. In the very recent protests of not only October 2nd, but the day of the leak, and then May 7th, and then May 14th after that, I believe we could all feel the anger and energy of the young people especially. I believe that this year, many of those people of voting age, and there are many out there younger than that, but the ones of voting age will see the importance of voting this year more than ever. But I also believe they want to do more than vote. They have the energy, skills, talent, and enough outrage to fill the streets, not once, not twice, but again and again. So along with the storytelling, testimony, consciousness raising, fundraising, educationals, and more, I think we need to do, and Chicago for Abortion Rights believes that we need to do, as Latin America, Ireland, Poland, and others have done. Get into the streets, take it back into the streets, and bring new and wider layers. As a decade-long labor union activist, I believe this is another resource to be tapped far more than it has been, especially here in Illinois, where there's still such a high number of unionized workers, even though we've been devastated in recent decades. And we need those people to definitely to vote, but to also do more than vote, which is where the day of decision, which most of you already know about, and several organizations here are among the more than 35 co-sponsors now of the plan to take to the streets in Chicago's Federal Plaza at 5:30 on the day of decision, with signs, with banners, with lots of water, especially if it's hot, with green bandanas or clothing, and bringing friends, families, coworkers with you. A big emphasis at that will be on hearing from the abortion providers, abortion recipients, and those most directly impacted. So that means many of the groups that other speakers here are speaking to. As we go through these next 2 weeks, when this decision will come, we'll want to come together again and again to plan, discuss, and take action. I know that none of us thinks we can go back. So we must meet the days ahead with resistance, defiance, and a conviction that we can not only win lost ground, but win access for all, wherever and whenever they need it, in Illinois and around the country. Thanks.
Thanks, Linda. Linda, where's the best place to get the information on the rally? I know it's the day of the decision, 5:30 Federal Plaza, right? Is there a website or a Facebook?
I just put a Facebook event page. And
Okay.
for those that maybe don't use Facebook, I can try to provide something else. I know that many organizations of those 35 are also doing e-blasts, have it on their website. So if you can go to this page, you will see all the people that are involved. You will also see information about what to expect on the day and how you can get involved as well.
Great. Yeah, we're planning a meetup in Evanston for a group to go down whenever it happens. And any intel, we think it's next Monday?
Well, next Monday is Juneteenth, federally celebrated holiday.
Oh, right. No, I meant the Monday after. Yeah.
So, however, in looking at the Supreme Court website a few hours ago, which after their conference days, most Thursdays, which is today, they put up generally, and they did today, their forecast of their calendar for next week. And Tuesday is an opinion issuance day. And Thursday is now going to be an order list and an opinion day. So at the very least, next Tuesday, the 21st, and next Thursday, the 23rd, are days where it could happen. I realize from many of you and following the SCOTUS blog, 14,000 people were there this past week, which is kind of amazing. Looking for this issue most of all, but several other controversial ones. So a lot of the pundits think that it won't be till the very end, that for a variety of reasons of preparation of the different opinions, not just, potentially more than the majority and dissenting, and also because it's so controversial, they're putting it close to the end of session when they can all take off for the summer. But whatever it is, that's why this day-to-day preparation of talking about it and spreading the word to mobilize is actually building up enough attention that I've had people get in touch with me and ask because they don't want to schedule a dinner with their friends and conflict with this protest. So I think that we'll have a large turnout whenever it comes. We obviously can't know till the day of, but
Yeah.
that's what we're preparing.
Well, thank you so much, Linda. Thank you for everything you have done and for everything that you continue to do. You do great stuff. Now, next, I'm going to turn it over to Moni Ruiz Velasco, who is from Equality, Illinois. Let me see if I can pull you up and give you the spotlight, Moni. It's being, just give me a second. It's being difficult. It does not want to give me the participant list. It's all right. Keep smiling. You look great. Moni, why don't you go ahead and start talking and I'll keep working. Rose, can you check and see if you can get the participant list to open and switch the spotlight? You're a co-host. It's for some reason it's fighting me.
All right, I'll get started. Thank you, Candace, for inviting me to be a part of this. As Candace said, and hi, everybody, my name is Moni Ruiz Velasco. My pronouns are she, her. I'm the Deputy Director at Equality, Illinois. And with Linda and many of the folks here on the call, we've been, thank you, very involved in this fight for reproductive justice. And our work obviously is an LGBTQ civil rights organization. We believe everyone has a fundamental right to sexual and bodily autonomy, which includes the right to decide whether or when to become a parent and to do so with dignity and free from violence and discrimination. LGBTQ people need access to reproductive health care and services, but we continue to face pervasive discrimination and limitations to access based on lack of recognition of our identities and relationships. And in fact, teen pregnancy disproportionately impacts queer youth in this country. When we often talk about reproductive health as a women's issue, but LGBTQ people, including lesbians, bisexual women, transgender men, intersex folks, gender diverse individuals can get pregnant, use birth controls, have abortions, and carry pregnancy. So we really want to talk about this as an issue beyond women's rights. Obviously, it impacts women, but it also impacts a lot of other people who can get pregnant and who need to access reproductive rights. There are systemic and intentional efforts taking place to undermine and attack our communities. Nearly 300 anti-trans and anti-gay bills were introduced this year alone in state houses across the country, including some here in Illinois. Opponents use religion and conscience as a guise for discrimination against LGBTQ people and against access to reproductive health. Hard-won legal rights as LGBTQ and reproductive rights movements have been intertwined through Supreme Court decisions and other laws dating back to over 40 years. And Roe affirmed, obviously, the right to abortion under the 14th Amendment, liberty protections, under the right to privacy. And these protections provided substantive and procedural due process and rights at state and federal levels through the Due Process Clause in the 14th Amendment. The recently leaked Dobbs draft decision that we're talking about will have the harshest impact on Black and brown women and pregnant people, women and pregnant people living in poverty, among others. And we know that once Roe falls, and I say we know because it's not just something that we're guessing or we're thinking, opponents will continue their fight to undo the progress we've made. We know this because they've made it public and abundantly clear. Former Texas Solicitor General Jonathan Mitchell argued in his amicus brief before the U.S. Supreme Court in Dobbs that in the Dobbs case that marriage equality, the right to bodily autonomy, protections from criminalization of same-sex relationships were court-invented rights, and those are his words, and called them judicial concoctions. So he indicated their intent to fight to overturn the protections that we have fought so hard to obtain. So our rights as LGBTQ people are deeply intertwined with reproductive rights. They are affirmed by the Supreme Court based on the same exact 14th Amendment privacy protection as abortion rights. And I just want to say, in case you don't know who Jonathan Mitchell is, he's not some right-wing fringe person. He is the architect of the anti-abortion laws in Texas. He is the former Solicitor General of Texas, who went to the University of Chicago Law School and was Justice Scalia's clerk at the US Supreme Court. He, like I said, referred to the Lawrence, Texas case as court invented rights, in the Dobbs case, and has been arguing these line of cases way before the Dobbs case. He also said that there is no other source of law that can be invoked to salvage the existence of LGBTQ rights that have been protected by Supreme Court precedent. His ominous warning about Lawrence and Obergefell, which are the cases that we were talking about, the Supreme Court cases that legalized sodomy and same-sex marriage, respectively, he said, I called them lawless, just as lawless as Roe. So reproductive rights or LGBTQ rights, we really can't separate the two, both in our advocacy as well as in law. We need to really continue to have these hard conversations with our families. I think that's, one of the things we're really calling on people to do with our friends. Like Linda said, we need to show up in the streets. And every time we need to show up, we need to support all these amazing organizations that are here, and especially the abortion funds that are doing such hard work. And I can't leave here without saying that we need to vote for pro-equality and pro-choice candidates. And it's so important that we get our friends out to vote. I think everyone who's on this call is already engaged and committed and doing a lot of important work. But we need to make sure as many people as we can show up to vote, because we know that the more people that show up to vote, the more likely that the candidates that support our issues are to win. And when there's low voter turnout, the other side wins. So we really need to all work together to make sure we get as many people out to vote. So thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much, Moni. Thanks for pointing out the fact that this is so much bigger than a single issue, and that we all really just desperately need to work together. I am still having trouble with opening the chat. So Rose, if you can switch over to Etta. Etta is Etta Worthington, who is the co-manager of the Truth Brigade Illinois group with me, is going to talk about abortion messaging. But you got me on spotlight. Can you, okay, you switch it to Etta.
I'm here too. I
also dropped my mouse right before this started, so hold on.
I'm sorry. I don't know.
It's quite all right.
It's okay. Well,
I thought it was both of you.
While we're trying to find me. Oh, there I am. Very good.
All right.
I just want to say quickly, for any of you that don't know about Truth Brigade and Truth Brigade Illinois, we're part of a national group of activists who are fighting disinformation online and offline. We use a specific methodology called the Truth Sandwich, but another thing that we've been doing is we've been looking really hard at the words that we use. And so what we're going to do tonight is talk a little bit about messaging related to abortion and some of the things that we have learned about that. And Candace, I think I've lost you, but I think we have some slides.
Here we go.
Yes. Good. So we really, yes. So
sorry.
Yes. There we go. Let's stop. Yes. An important thing that we've learned is we have to seize the storyline. We can't just be reacting. We need to make it really clear that a majority of Americans support safe, legal, and accessible abortion care. And we need to focus on the fact that this is about our freedom to decide whether, when, and with whom to have a family. And notice that there's a focus on the core values of freedom and family. Now, I think someone else mentioned about a campaigns in Ireland and Argentina. which were messaging campaigns that were trying to, help get abortion rights legalized there. Both of those are Catholic nations, I believe. I know Ireland for sure. And in Ireland, it seemed like what was really effective in terms of the messaging was what they say it called the 3 C's: care, compassion, and change. And in Argentina, the focus was more on the message that, because especially in rural areas, legalized abortions would save thousands of lives. So we can learn something from what some successful campaigns, messaging-wise, have been in other countries. Okay, and one of the things that particularly Anat Shankar-Arsario, who many of you may know of, is encouraging us to do is not use the term choice. And why? Because it seems frivolous. It may be selfish. We associate it with consumer choices. So let's think about our language if we can find ways to say things without saying choice.
Okay.
And we're going to play a video that was particularly effective, or is effective, and we hope people will share.
Someone you love may struggle with a pregnancy. A pregnancy they longed for that slipped away. Someone they were counting down the days to meet that couldn't survive. A pregnancy that would endanger providing for the children they already have. A pregnancy they were too sick to carry. That they never planned to have. That wasn't right for them. That comes too soon after giving birth. That would mean starting over. Someone you love might need an abortion someday. You can help ensure that when the day comes, they can get the care they need. Support you.
I don't know about you, but I find that pretty powerful video. And it seems to hit a lot of points. And again, focusing on care and compassion. A totally different look on abortion than usually we have.
Someone you love may struggle.
Candace wants to
There we go.
have us watch it again.
There we go.
But we're going to give
It's
you an
the every
opportunity to
time.
get the link so you can watch and share. This is part of a hashtag Someone You Love campaign. This comes from Gutsy Media. There's a toolkit which we'll put in the chat so you can do this. But some of the posts connected to this, accompanying this video, include things like, in these past couple years, you have taught us anything that's, you never know when someone you love might need your help someday. Watch and share this video. This is something you can definitely do online. 59% of Americans believe abortion should be legal in most or all cases. The Supreme Court should too. Please share, protect Roe, protect someone you love. And all gets back to that personal thing. Some of the, and some of the resources that we're going to give you will go into more detail, but there's things to look at in terms of what to say and what not to say. Some words just trigger the wrong response in people. So we don't say abort a child, end a pregnancy. Much more effective. Abortion is illegal. Well, yeah, that's what we're worried about, but abortion is legally restricted is a more powerful, from our point of view, way to say it. And, you know, the doctors who perform these things, abortionists, no, we don't say that. They are healthcare providers. Focus on healthcare. Baby, instead of saying baby, we say embryo or fetus when this is an unborn baby. And looking at people who don't want to provide abortions, they have conscientious objection. We don't say that. We'll say provider refusal. And not going to say get rid of the baby. Choose not to move through a full pregnancy. Much more powerful, much more compassionate, much more caring. Maybe someone would say that they would keep the baby, but instead we would say continue the pregnancy, because again, this is a fetus. This is an embryo that we're talking about. Late-term abortion, when it's referred to, we're not going to call it that. We're going to say abortion in second or third trimester. And prevent abortion, what we're going to focus on is prevent unwanted pregnancies. So we kind of took some of what we had from that toolkit and used the formula that we tend to do, which is talking first about shared values and then look at some of the bad things that are out there and then maybe a call to action or a vision. So no matter our gender or zip code, we all believe people should have good health care. With the Supreme Court poised to strip our freedom to decide if, how, and when to grow our families, it's more important than ever for our elected leaders to protect someone you love. Watch and share this video. We'll share these posts so that you can actually do that. A couple more.
Yeah, we're short on time, so I'm going to cut you off a
Sure.
little bit. But here's some messaging resources on this last slide that we put together that have some great background information and messages. We will actually send these slides out so that people can have these available to them. And now I wanted, Rose, can you check and see if Representative Kelly Cassidy has been able to join us?
I do see her here.
I'm
Welcome.
here.
Great.
I'm going to put you on spotlight in a moment.
Perfect. Thank you so much for joining us, Representative Cassidy. We're looking forward to hearing from you and have your introduce Heather Booth. Thanks.
I'm delighted to. Good evening. I am Kelly Cassidy. I use she, her pronouns. I am the state representative of the 14th district, which includes the Chicago neighborhoods of Edgewater, Andersonville, Rogers Park, and a tiny little sliver of Evanston, at least through this map cycle. And, you know, I feel like this has been my life's work. And this is simply a continuation. You know, in many ways, where we are is pretty horrific, and it's easy to become dismayed. And at the same time, you know, we knew this was coming. We knew this is what they were working towards. And so for me, this has been, you know, sort of a time of reflection on the things that we got done in preparation. You know, that includes removing our trigger law, that includes passing the Reproductive Health Act, which I was the lead sponsor of. And, you know, last year or this year, I guess, repealing the Parental Notice of Abortion Act to create a pretty complete firewall around reproductive health care for Illinois. But we still have work to do. And I have spent these last several weeks working with my colleagues around the country, working with colleagues here in the state, looking at proactive measures we can take. You know, we're aware of how many folks are already coming into Illinois for services. And so, and obviously we anticipate that number will grow. And so for me, that's been my focus, is looking at what we need to do to ensure that we're prepared for that. You know, at the first press conference after the leaked decision, I laid down a challenge to my colleagues at every level of government to get creative, to contemplate, you know, what we can do, what we should do, and what's available to us to look at ways to ease folks' transitions into Illinois for services or permanently, frankly, and to make sure that we're doing everything we can to provide protections for both providers and patients here in Illinois. So we have a bill pending that my colleague Maura Hirschauer has sponsored, and that would protect some of our licensed healthcare professionals, in particular those in border communities who frequently maintain dual licenses here in Illinois and in other states. Sort of the normal thing in a licensing schematic like that is for a state to pretty much automatically accept adverse actions on someone's license in another state, as meaning that there should be adverse actions on your license here. With our awareness of being surrounded by states that are going out of their way to penalize providers, we want to make sure that we pass that bill that protects their licenses. I would like to see us go a step further. Lots of folks are talking about the Connecticut law. There's a California version that actually contemplates gender affirming care. And what I would like to see Illinois do, and what we're currently drafting, is a piece of legislation that marries those up and provides protections for inbound patients, provides protections for providers here in state, provides protections for providers who come here, to make sure that we're ensuring that folks are as safe as they can possibly be. But we want to do that in a way that's mindful of unintended consequences. And a great example I offer of this is, full faith and credit requires that states respect judgments from other states. When my oldest son was born and their other mother became their legal parent via second parent adoption, every time we left the state of Illinois, we carried more paperwork than toys, because we wanted to make sure that we would be protected, in particular when we visit my family in Florida. And so it's that sort of thing. We don't want to give states like Florida the option of ignoring our judgments. So we have to move with some care. California is about to amend their act to take some steps to protect for that. So we're waiting for that language. The beauty of Illinois is we're not in session right now. We have a little bit of time to make sure that we get this right. I want to take one more step and look at what someone might need if they are choosing to relocate to Illinois because of these changes, whether around reproductive health care or gender affirming care. So, healthcare providers, I want to facilitate moving their licenses here. I want to make it easy for them to come here and provide care. We know we're going to have a crisis of care here. We know we're going to be really challenged to meet demand with the caregivers that we have. And so, to make it possible for someone who's maybe practicing in a state that is taking away that ability to practice to come here and get their license moved in an easier way. Similarly, imagine you're a family in Alabama providing gender affirming care to your kid, but you now can't anymore and you have to relocate. I'd like Illinois to make it possible for that family, if they have professional licenses, to have an easier path to transferring their professional licenses, making it easier for folks to facilitate picking up and relocating if your state has become too hostile to live in. So that's what I'm working on now, working with my colleagues in the Senate, other colleagues in the House, to be aware of what we can do. I was thrilled that after I tossed that challenge of be creative to my colleagues, by the time I was done with dinner that night, Mayor Lightfoot's team called and asked if I could be at a press conference the next day where she was announcing dedicating $500,000 in this budget year to providers, to some of the logistics providers. So Chicago Abortion Fund, Midwest Access Coalition, Chicago Foundation for Women, to ensure that they had more resources for this anticipated influx. And that's the kind of creativity I'm looking for. Can we make it possible for folks to have access to more resources? Can we make sure that they're safe when they're here? Can we make sure that, for example, a traffic stop isn't going to show that there's a warrant for their arrest for either having had an abortion or having facilitated one in another state? These are all the questions that we're knocking around trying to figure out how to address. So with that, I'm happy to take some questions.
I actually think we are running a little.
I know I hit really close there,
on.
sorry.
Yeah, you did great, and thank you so much for all that you do. It's so important and it's so detailed. There's just so many things to be done, and it's great to hear that you're trying to get them done. So thank you so much. But if you can go ahead and.
Absolutely. Honestly, it's really hard to introduce someone who's been a hero for so many years. You know, coming up in the office of the National Organization for Women at Chicago Now, hearing my mentor, Sue Purrington, talk about the amazing Heather Booth and the work that she did that precedes all of us. We are in the presence of greatness, people. That's really all I can tell you about Heather Booth. She walks the walk, she talks the talk, she brings people up behind her. She is known for developing leadership. She is everything we need and more. So with that, please take it away, Heather.
Wow. If I were smart, I would stop right now, especially since Kelly Cassidy, you are the kind of leader that we so need. You are of the people, for the people, by the people. You are driving forward. You are a true champion. So thank you, thank you, thank you. I'm touched by your introduction, but I'm much more touched by the leadership that you provide, and particularly also to Candace and to Lenny, who are providing the leadership within this, not only this Zoom call, but within the organization. You really are the dynamic leadership that moves us forward. I didn't hear all the speeches, though I thought Edda's comments about the messaging. It is exactly right. And Edda, it is what I try to say in every talk that I give. So I'm carrying out just what you're proposing. And Moni, I heard you as I was coming on. I just was at another Zoom conference, and you are so right. All of our struggles are unified. LGBTQ plus, reproductive choice, racial justice, economic justice, labor justice, women's justice, environmental justice, all of it is unified. And though I didn't hear the other talks from Claire and Linda and Rose and Patty and Oren, I know you are all such champions. It's wonderful to be in your company. And particularly now, because we are on a knife's edge of democracy versus tyranny. This is in part about reproductive freedom. In part is it about, as Edda says, the most intimate decision that we can make in our lives about when, whether, or with whom we have a child. But it is even more than that. It is about what's the kind of future that we will have. And the result is, it is dispiriting even to us as well as to people in the public. There's been so much hate and anger going around. There's so many lies. COVID is demoralizing. Inflation is demoralizing. Then we didn't achieve everything we wanted to. But we are on a knife's edge because at the same time, there is an overwhelming amount of the American public that is in support of the very values that we are driving forward. In this last election, there were 81 million votes for Biden. That's more votes than any president has ever received, 7.1 million more than Trump had. Now, we should remember that a year before the election, people thought Trump would win. We can make change, but only when we organize. And we need to organize and bring a sense of the possibility of how we will win by working together and doing all the work that all of you are doing. We also can tie this together further around the January 6th hearings, not for what happened on one day, but because this was a criminal conspiracy that was an attack on the people of this country. And that's how we should talk about it. And remind people that this election then becomes a choice. It's not a referendum. Do you like what Biden did? Do you like what one candidate did? It's a choice. Are we moving forward with someone who is a a liar. They just had some of the lies that are exposed about Herschel Walker today in Georgia. He didn't graduate from college. He said he had graduated in the top of his class. Another child who's a child that he never acknowledged before, but who had sued him repeatedly in court. The candidates that are being put up against the pro-reproductive freedom candidates, the candidates being put up against the freedom candidates that we are supporting, this is a choice, and people will choose if we do the work to get out the message. And that's really what we need to do. That's our job. I first learned this when I was in the civil rights movement in Mississippi. When I was 18 years old, I joined the Freedom Summer Project. I see Linda's already nodding. Many of you are familiar with that project, where Northern students, I was in Chicago at the time, were recruited to support the courageous work of African Americans in Mississippi. And the Summer Project gained notoriety because 3 of the young volunteers, Andrew Goodman, James Chaney, and Michael Schwerner, were murdered at the hands of the Klan. But because people organized, even in the face of terror and injustice and horrible abuse, within a year we had a Voting Rights Act. And for nearly 50 years, we have been making progress. We are nowhere near the vision of the society we want, but we have been making progress because people organized. I returned to my campus, and a friend of mine told me that his sister was pregnant and nearly suicidal, and could I find someone to provide an abortion? I had actually never thought about the issue of abortion. I'm now 76. I said I had started organizing when I was a young teenager. But in the early 60s, we didn't talk about sex. We didn't talk about abortion. I never really knew about it. I've never had to face it myself. But as a good deed, truly as just following the golden rule, I told this friend that I try to find a provider. I went to, some of you may know, it was Dr. Quentin Young, who was the head of the Medical Committee for Human Rights in Chicago, MCHR, which was the medical arm of the civil rights movement. And he led me to another remarkable doctor, T.R.M. Howard, who was an African-American leader who had been a champion of civil rights in Mississippi until his name appeared on a Klan death list, because he stood up for the investigation of the murder of Emmett Till, who was a Chicago teenager who was killed because he was charged with whistling at a white woman who later recanted. So Dr. Howard came to Chicago. He performed the abortion. I thought that was it, a one-time act of kindness, a good deed for a friend. But word must have spread and someone else called. I made the arrangement with Dr. Howard and someone else called. And at that point, I realized we need to set up a system. That's what an organizer does. And in setting up a system, because it was illegal, 3 people talking about having an abortion in Chicago at that point was a conspiracy to commit a felony. So we told people to call and ask for Jane. We called it Jane. Over time, so many women were coming through, so many people were coming through. There were probably, by the height of Jane, maybe there were 100 people a week coming through for abortions. It was too much for one person to handle. And the women who, I then recruited others into this service that we called Jane. And the women of Jane learned how and performed 11,000 abortions before Roe. There now is a movie about this called The Janes. And there's also, in September, there'll be a Sigourney Weaver movie where she plays a version, a combination version, it's a Hollywood version of the story. And that's called Jane, another movie. But The Janes is now available on HBO. And what we learned is if you stand up, if you're able, if you fight back, We can change this world, and over time, this most intimate decision of our lives was respected. Jane made it safe, we made it accessible, but it was not legal. And right now, under this threat of turning the law on its head, we know now, Guttmacher Institute now said that 1 in 5 people who can have a child will have an abortion. It is not rare. That means it could be, as Etta says, your sister, your neighbor, your cousin. It could be your mother. The majority of people who have abortions already have children. They know what's involved, and they know if it's the right time for them or not. So with public support and morality on our side, not only on this issue, but the majority support on sensible gun laws, on climate, on DACA, on people who came to this country as children, getting permanent status for immigration. There are so many issues in which the majority of the country are with us. We are unified, just as the struggles around race and LGBTQ and economic justice are all unified with reproductive justice. This is a question of freedom versus tyranny. We are on this knife's edge, and you are among the people who can make the difference, who can move us towards the direction of democracy, but it depends on what we do. And in Illinois, which will be one of the sanctuary states, even if the law is overturned, we still have to make sure that the judicial seats stay democratic, stay for reproductive freedom. The 2nd and 3rd judicial districts are crucial, and what you do will matter. Having a Democratic governor, having Democratic majorities in the legislatures. And there are 4 M's that I say we all need to do. 4 M's, members, we need to recruit people, members. Message, M for message. We have to get out the word and communicate. We have to raise money and give money. It costs money, for change is not free. And movement, we need to be there when the movement is ready to move on. This Saturday, there are demonstrations for a moral act on moral movement on poverty and for economic justice. I'll be there. I know you are there in this struggle. I thank you for what all of you have done so far. I thank you for what you'll be doing in the future. And I look forward to celebrating our victories together, because when we organize, we will change this world. Thank you all.
Thank you, Heather, so much for that inspiration and that hope. And thanks to all of our speakers for all the great information that you shared with us tonight. And thank you all for coming. We can do it. We have to do it. We just got to keep on going on. So thanks. Take care, everybody.